We snuggle them up together.
These tiger toys come a long way from China,
You have a good day, okay?
which are gifts for a flying tiger veteran. His name is Glen Beneda.
That's what you are. Unforgettable.
The song ringing in this room was his favorite. Our story starts from one morning, about half a year after he passed away. It is about this veteran and his 60-year relationship with the Chinese people. McCook, a small town in Nebraska, was the place where Glen Beneda was born and grew up. In the early 1940s, it was a quiet and peaceful town.
I guess life was a little different in those days. You didn't have the stress and worries that if you did have them, you weren't aware of them. And we might have been poor, but we didn't know we were poor. We were happy. So those were what we called the good old days.
At the end of 1941, its peace was broken by war.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The war also interrupted Beneda's school life. He was then in the first year of college.
Well, naturally, it was a surprise. We were angry. So I turned 18 exactly 30 days after Pearl Harbor, and then I applied for a flight training. I think the first two things you mentioned is the love of our country and wanting to fight for it.
After enlisting and receiving almost 1 year of flying training, Glen Beneda was sent to China in May of 1943 and became a fighter pilot in the well-known Flying Tigers. Glen Beneda was assigned to the 76th Squadron under the 23rd Fighter Group of 14th Air Force, commanded by General Claire Chennault. From June 13, 1943 on, Glen Beneda joined the fight against Japanese aggression, and his performance was recorded in the flight log. But this log came to an end on May 6, 1944. On that day, the 14th Air Force sent a large group of planes to bomb the Japanese Army base in Hanko, Hubei province. Glen Beneda was in a P-51 fighter for top cover, where he was hit by a Japanese fighter.
Probably 25 of them or 30, and they dove down on us. And in the meantime, the bombers and the P-40s went into the target and left, and none of them were shot down. because we held the Zeros off while he went in and bombed. And the Zeros were able to shoot down 3 of the P-38s. I was just getting in position to shoot down a Zero when I got hit from behind. And I knew I was in bad shape, so I was able to get away from the fight by diving away. And then eventually, why I had to parachute, my plane quit running, it was on fire, so I had to jump out.
His fellow pilots were anxiously awaiting his return, but all they could do was wait and wait. 20 days later, the Department of War in Washington decided to send a telegram to Beneda's mother. Mrs. Frances Eleanor Beneda. The Secretary of War desires me to express his deep regret that your son, First Lieutenant Glen E. Beneda, has been reported missing in action since 6 May over China, period. Another 10 days passed. General Chennault, the 14th Air Force commander, had to write a letter to Glen Beneda's mother. Every effort has been made to locate your son, and our efforts will continue. However, there is very little hope for his safe return. Your son was awarded the Air Medal for Meritorious Achievement in Flight, in keeping with the highest traditions of the Army Air Forces. He was, in every respect, a fine officer and a true American.
It was very, very difficult for my father. But my mother has a lot of strength. But she said, "Now, don't tell anybody, Luann," because that's sort of kept, she didn't want anyone else to know, and she had faith in that. But yes, the telegram came, and it was a bad day, but I had to go on to school. And of course, I just teared up and cried all the way to school.
At noon on May 6th, farmers near the lake in Janui County of Hubei Province watched as a plane fell out of the sky.
And I landed in this rice paddy where the Chinese were out there working, and this Chinese man came right out to me, and I had a pony-talkie. I pulled that out, and I had my flag saying Megwa, Megwa, and we were able to talk back and forth by using the pony-talkie. He said he'd help me.
During that time period, Kuomintang and the Communist Party had fought together against Japanese aggressors, and the nationalist government provided each Flying Tiger's pilot with a bloodshed and a pointy-talkie. They also encouraged anti-Japanese armies and people across the country to try their best in helping American pilots. The place where Glen Beneda came down was just a couple of hours' distance from the Japanese army base. At this critical juncture, Loa Fouché, head of Lojia village, stepped out from the crowd. He and the other villagers quickly carried him away from the rice paddy to this neighborhood for a rest. Yang Han Gui, then a 21-year-old woman, found him a comfortable wooden bed in her home.
过来都是个人把他两边个人把他请了过来的，那个人那个脚上还是湿的嘛，有时他那个后座是你们歪在这个椅子高背个哦，把个箱子向你朝那吹你戳着的，不舒服。
After a rest, Loa Fouché moved Beneda to his own home and prepared lunch for him as well.
口水用量大了，我们姊妹是多了啦。一下子起的节菜呀，搞那些名堂呢，才弄到一碗破饭了去，还有没有好起？拿的筷子还不起，他要切条子，他说我切条子，好拿条子了，他又说，哎喝不得，吃不下去，所以得切。
Landing on such an unknown place, meeting all the unknown faces, and listening to the unknown language, Glen Beneda was worried and wondered where these unknown people would take him to. But his worry disappeared because of the sincerity and kindness of these farmers.
I jumped out and I was hit by the tail, and that bump that when I hit the airplane didn't really feel like I hurt it in the beginning, but when I tried to get up, I couldn't, and my whole leg was black and blue from that, and I had a spot there where the pus and blood had out of my leg.
Simple stretcher, strong arms. The people of Lojia village bravely offered their help. They transferred Glen Beneda to Jolao Zui, an anti-Japanese base, and had the anti-Japanese guerrillas help.
到走了才感觉那个语言不懂啊，就走了这那个同文男的。 同文男的是个大粤号，就找同文男的那个罗中生，他的英语也不过跟，就边说啊边做手势。你们说的那个北京人懂得了，那个北京人笑起来了。他说那个意思好像说呢，我的命得着活着。
Glen Beneda was no longer worried. But for the anti-Japanese guerrillas, their concerns had just begun. To transfer Glen Beneda to a safe place, they had to go through an area controlled by Japanese forces. To make the journey as safely as possible, the guerrillas had to travel at night.
They carried me on the stretcher till for a week or so. One night when we stopped, and it was a black night, and I was laying on my stretcher, and when I heard this tut 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 tut, and I looked over to my right, and I could see the flashes from the muzzle of the machine gun. And and I rolled off of the stretcher. And they always had a young lad with me to help me. And we were able to go over and get in the ditch and hide in a ditch while the fight went on. And it lasted until daylight.
And 7 days later, Glen Beneda was escorted by soldiers from the 5th Division of the new 4th Army and continued his journey to the division headquarters. From farmers to guerrillas, and then to the new 4th Army soldiers, his rescue was like a relay. All along the way, Glen Beneda had been treated like a family member by his Chinese rescuers.
They couldn't have treated me any better. When they fed me, whatever they fed me, if I ate it all, by the next time they would give me more. I learned that if they gave me 2 eggs and I ate them both, why they'd give me 3. So I always left something so they wouldn't be giving me too much.
Eggs were considered the most precious nourishment at that time. To ensure that Glen Beneda could eat well was a sincere expression of goodwill from the Chinese to the Flying Tigers. "23 days later, Glen Beneda arrived safely at the 5th Division headquarters of the new 4th Army, Baiguoshuwan at Dawu County, Hubei Province. Commander Li Xianyan warmly welcomed him. They had a nice discussion, topics covering from the anti-fascist war in Europe to the Eastern Front, and from the anti-Japanese base area to the war situation in the whole of China. With careful attendance of Chinese farmers and soldiers, Glen Beneda fully recovered. He was even able to play ping pong fairly well at the headquarters. This ping pong experience became one of his greatest prides and lifelong cherishment.
I played a lot of ping pong when I was growing up, and I got pretty good at it. Not world class, but all those Chinese that I played there, I was able to beat those fairly easily. And they were all using the right handle, but when they saw that, why, I think when Nixon opened up relations with China, they had that ping pong diplomacy, and they had the Chinese were the best ping pong players in the world at that time, and a lot of them were holding the ball with that. Some of them were. So I told my boys, I said, I taught them how to do that, but I don't think so.
Before leaving the 5th Division, Commander Lee gave Glen Beneda a Japanese pistol and one of his photos as souvenirs. On that photo, he left his smile permanently to this Flying Tiger pilot. After almost 60 days, Glen Beneda finally returned safely to the headquarters of the 14th Army Base in Chongqing. After Glen Beneda, the 5th Division of the new 4th Army rescued another 5 American pilots. They brought their stories back to the 14th Air Force. Having heard of the rescue stories of Glen Beneda and other pilots, General Chennault wrote a letter to Zhu De, commander of the 8th Route Army, to express his much appreciation. 1 month later, the new 4th Army, under Commander Lee, began their cooperation in exchanging information. with the 14th Air Force and 5th Division. This telegram was sent by Glen Beneda to his parents right after he returned to his base. Local newspapers at McCook spread the good news quickly to every corner of the town. In September 1944, Glen Beneda left China for America, but he had always kept the love of the Chinese people deeply in his heart.
Or when he got together with his friends, when we'd go to the annual meetings of the Tiger meetings, and he'd get together with other pilots, and then they'd sit around and they'd tell stories. Well, gee, do you remember when we did this? Or, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, don't you remember so-and-so? And so then all those things would come out. Then afterwards, I remember him telling me this story, which was very difficult for me to watch in the documentary. If it weren't for the Chinese, I wouldn't be here. And all of our Chinese friends have given us so many wonderful, wonderful gifts. But like I said, the greatest gift they could give us was Glen's life.
Every dream I dream.
This is a life that they shared for 65 years.
And you make every dream I dream come true. Each night I close my eyes, and it's you I see. As I relive, you give to me.
During the days the American Flying Tigers were in China, posters saying "You reap what you sow" were everywhere. People understood that to save a Flying Tigers pilot meant to sow a seed of friendship. More than 60 years ago, a special attachment began to grow between Glen Beneda and the Chinese people. As an American, what did he get from this attachment?
The very thing that really spoke to my dad's heart was that they put him on a stretcher and they carried him. And there'd be 4 people that would carry my father, and then they would get tired, and there would be 4 more. He had the serious injury. They took care of his injury. They fed him. When he was cold, they gave him blankets, and they even made a makeshift bed for him because they knew he didn't sleep the same way that the Chinese slept, so they did that. And even when they tried to feed him, they came and instead they knew he couldn't use the chopsticks, so they brought him a spoon. And so I think these loving deeds and act of kindness had ministered to his heart for so many years. I really feel that's why he went on the fire department, because that way he could perform those same deeds. People would have a heart attack, or they'd have a medical emergency or a fire. Then he would come and he would minister to them and serve them and provide the same care that the Chinese provided for him when he was younger.
My dad and his generation, they didn't say, "I love you." My dad said, "I love you," in the way he treated me, the way he taught me, his integrity. So my dad taught me that, to love people, to honor people, to respect people. We call them veterans hospitals. So in those hospitals, we take care of people like my father, World War II veterans. I know my dad is very proud when I worked in hospital.
Beneda often said, "Without Chinese people's help, I could not have had this family." He would never forget the farmers and soldiers who had rescued him. Neither did people in Jianli County, Hubei Province, forget about the Flying Tigers pilot they had rescued. In 2005, with the help of the American China Aviation Heritage Foundation and other institutions, people noticed the 3 machine guns taken away from the wreckage of the airplane.
他们在韩博拍摄了这3挺机枪的编号，在美国有关方面的大力协助下，我们通过机枪的编号找到了当年配备该机枪的飞机的编号，又通过飞机的编号找到了当年驾驶这架飞机的飞行员，他就是格林·本内达。
That year marked the 60th anniversary of the victories of the World Anti-Fascist War and China's resistance war against Japanese aggression. Many American Flying Tigers veterans were invited by the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries to visit China, and Glen Beneda was on the invitation list. "60-day fraternity, 60-year friendship, 18-year hard search, and 6,500-day expectation all came to this day, September 9th, 2005. In order to welcome him, farmers at Lojia village made a special bamboo chair to carry him, just like what they did to him before, to revisit the place where his airplane came down. It was on this trip that Glen Beneda met with Madame Li Xiaolin, Vice President of the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, the daughter of Li Xianyang, former commander of the 5th Division of the new 4th Army. After he returned to the United States, Glen Beneda could not rest from the excitement. In 2010, Glen Beneda, at age of 86, was aware that his life was coming to an end. He made a decision to go back to China to complete his last wish for his gratitude to the Chinese people.
He had gone to the doctor, and the doctor advised him not to go. Said it was very dangerous and he didn't want him to go. And once again, you know, he always said, I could never repay the Chinese people, and I could never pay them back for their generosity and their love towards me.
But I believe that I owe a debt to the Chinese people. They've been so good to me. But it's really a huge debt that I owe to the new 4th Army. It's so huge, there's no way I can pay it back. Because they saved my life. And that's why I'm able to be here today.
On October 11th, 2010, Glen Beneda returned to China. Now he had 9 heart stents and 1 heart pacemaker reinstalled. Glen Beneda came to visit the Li Xianyan Memorial Garden in Hong'an County, Hubei Province, to pay his deep respect to his savior, the commander of the 5th Division of the new 4th Army, and later, the Chinese president. He presented the pistol given by Commander Li to him as a souvenir 60 years ago to the Memorial Garden as a permanent collection. Also, Glen Beneda brought his 10 family members from 3 generations to meet the people at Lojia Village, Jianli County. It was his wish that the Beneda family would always be friends with the Chinese people for generations to come.
The thing that was evident to me was that the spirit, the people of China called my grandfather a hero because they came and to fight on behalf of China. But my grandfather called the people of China the heroes because they helped him escape. And I want them to know that the same spirit also exists in my grandfather's sons and in his grandsons and even in my children who now know about China and know about World War II and American and Chinese involvement together. And so this is why the trip is very meaningful to me, is to continue the friendship that was built so many years ago.
After he returned to his home in Lompoc, California from his last Thanksgiving trip to China, Glen Beneda suffered a heart attack.
He said that this heart condition that I have, it has nothing to do with China, it has nothing to do with my trip to China. It's just something that happened. And so just before he died, a couple hours before, he was just so loving right up to the very end. Just never complained. And my mom was sitting there, and she said, "Daddy, I love you. Glenn, I love you." That was it.
I just tell my kids and my grandkids to love each other every day. At night when I go to bed, because we're always held hands. So I still reach over and pat the bed and say goodnight, honey. I love you.
On March 26th, 2011, just prior to the first Chinese traditional tomb sweeping day after Glen Beneda's death, Madame Li Xiaolin, Vice President of the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, made a special trip to McCook, Glen Beneda's hometown. During the visit, she paid her deep respect and gratitude to this Flying Tigers veteran. 11th, 2011, according to Glen Beneda's wish, his wife, Eleanor Beneda, and 2 sons made a special trip to the Li Shanyan Memorial Garden in Hong'an County, Hubei Province, to settle part of Glen Beneda's ashes, a place where he narrowly escaped with his life and where he felt indebted for and missed the most.
Was heroic, the rescue by the Chinese of downed American pilots. They risked their own lives in bringing our men to safety or getting them hidden, and I've always admired those who participated and those who were willing to reach out and help a fallen airman. And the Chinese were wonderful in doing this, rescuing our people, and so I think there's a message for it, but I think our relationship now with China is such that it's gone past any individual incidents of this nature. It's built on a foundation of, I hope, of trust and of mutual congeniality.